it's about, and this is the other thing I would say for this group that strikes me is, we've talked a lot about aviation as an end, but it's also a means. To me, the other opportunity for growth in aviation is as a means to larger STEM, right? So it's one thing, like, so to be honest, if I'm Gates Foundation, do I need more girl pilots? On the other hand, if you could say, we have a curriculum that could create girls who are interested in STEM, and they're going to come here in high school, and they're not going to, you know, who knows, they're probably not going to go to aviation schools, but they're going to, you know, and so using the aviation school as a gateway to STEM, to me, is, you know,
trust me, the marketing was all STEM. But
the philosophy also has to be about, we're not even trying to keep these students. We're about, we're the gateway to STEM, right? And can aviation be a gateway to STEM for, you know, because it's everything from, do we use schools of aviation as leadership training courses to, do we have high school programs as gateways to STEM? You know, to echo what we were talking about earlier, that's where the revenue that allows you to do the other stuff, right? So we've been talking a lot about reforming the aviation industry. That's a big challenge. In the meantime, how do we find innovative ways to leverage resources we have? Yeah, why is it that there's all this push for STEM camps? And granted, where we live in Boston, but I haven't seen Bridgewater State. I don't see anything about, you know, hey, come, you know, learn to be a, you know, but no, but like, you know, do the stuff for high school kids and even below, just as a way of getting them, you know, take ownership of, like, we'll do, you know, as you said, it's experiential learning. Well, what's more experiential than, you know, from the time my boys are young age, they're doing paper airplanes, right? I mean, the idea of okay, so if you have the STEM side of the very junior education system, and then the leadership side of the other education, can you get enough revenue resources out of those, or not enough, but are those opportunities for new revenue with existing resources as a way of demonstrating to your leadership that, hey, aviation schools aren't just about training pilots, right? We're actually about a larger ecosystem, and aviation is central. Well, I would also argue revenue is not only about the tradition. I mean, the one thing that Jason talked about is revenue is not simply about the traditional students, right? And thinking about it, but it's also about different ways of monetizing assets. And to your point, though, it's also about how do you share the cost base more effectively with your institution, with your peers. You know, because I think it's funny, because traveling the country, visiting universities, meeting with presidents and governors. On the one hand, I understand they're all pleading poverty. On the other hand, I still feel like universities are so rife with a need for innovation. And, you know, I always judge how fat a university is by how many people, you know, if I'm waiting to meet with someone, come up and ask if I've had assistants, right? Why every university professor has a personal assistant in this day and age, right? I mean, that's a throwback to whatever.
Because you can.
Well, you can, right? Well, that's the point. If you drive by the Harvard campus, the Executive Ed Center is the biggest part of the B school, right? Yeah, they charge a lot for the MBA, but it's those executive eds, and they are burning people through there. And yeah, you have to do it, you know, you want to protect your brand, but you know, it's a great way of utilizing the assets, right? And especially if those assets are really fallow and not be deployed. You know, continuing ed and executive ed are two of the areas where, you know, we've done a lot of work. What also is the whole model is, you hit the nail on the head, is Gen Ed is always subsidized advanced. Tertiary is always subsidized online. But there's actually a company here, you might want to check it out, because they're doing some interesting stuff called Straighter Line, which is out of Baltimore, basically, a guy named Bert Smith. And his whole model is, we can do all your Gen Ed courses. He goes to employers and says, why I know you folks are going for a degree at institution X or institution Y. We can do all your Gen Ed courses for a fraction of the cost on a subscription basis. Right, so why should you, employer who's sending somebody back to school for a bachelor's or master's, be teaching, you know, basic, you know, composition? Why should you pay for that, you know, advanced? You're basically subsidizing all the advanced literature courses. We'll do it. We have the articulation agreements in place, and so, you know, that's one of the things. Is what I see happening, and what our firm looks at is, everyone thinks about institutions being replaced, but I think that's the wrong level of analysis, because the institutions are going to survive, but what's going to happen is that whole supply chain is going to get broken apart, right? Who's teaching is going to be different. What constitutes a course, right? I mean, open courseware between, I don't know if any of you have looked at, Thurn and I think I always mispronounce the other gentleman's name, but the two Scandinavians who taught that artificial intelligence course at Stanford, right? Free open courseware, 180,000 people.
Yeah, I was going to say they're headed.
Right? Well, but what's notable about it is, in the end, you didn't get anything that said you took a course from Stanford, but you got a letter from the professor saying you took the course. It's pretty good, right? And then that, very quickly, that can morph into is those are the courses, is the credential idea of, well, here are the badges for the lifelong learning and the competencies, or I'm waiting for some very smart entrepreneur at the university with all the open courseware that's flourishing to say, you know what, here is a map of open courseware to take. We're not going to teach any of these courses, but you just got to come back to our campus for one course and pay us $20,000 and then you get a degree from us. Right? You've suddenly shifted all the costs over to everyone else in the open courseware. You've put the connective tissue together, and you can get to something that's actually tangible. Now that seems outrageous, but on the other hand, this industry is at one time insisted, higher education universities, at one time universities insisted the only way you could actually go to Yale or go to Michigan was to actually go and have a degree that was, or have an exam that was proctored by a Yale or Harvard professor. Well, that broke down. And so eventually I think we see more and more disaggregation at that point. And to your point, the other idea is where's the value add? Right? The value add is in the professional training, not in teaching basic calculus. Right? There's no value add. I mean, we're already seeing that today at some of the elite schools. It's a dirty little secret. Harvard doesn't teach accounting. When they want their MBA students to take accounting, they do it through an online course that's being taught with some BYU professors. That's Clayton Christensen taught Harvard. Yeah, well, because they can't recruit faculty who want to teach accounting. They're not going to. So they know that certain students are going to want to take some basic accounting. So let's have it taught by someone else, right? And that disaggregation is that's what we mean by disruption. And in some ways, that's an opportunity for this domain because they're unlike I'll confess as a political scientist, what's really the higher value add of political science? Right? Aviation is a very specific skill and series of techniques that you clearly can be embodied in the institution and be in the schools. Whereas at some point you could argue, do you really need advanced social sciences versus the basics? So being that top layer, there might be a real opportunity there, especially, and that's where the collaboration comes in, right? Why do you each need to do your own general ed? Could there be a course of general ed? This is just brainstorming, but is there a course of general ed that is most appropriate for aviation that the collection of schools get together and say, this is what we want our people to take?
Yeah.